I'm Catherine White, your host of the weekly Friday Power Lunch. This show brings you the guests, the issues, the action, and one big room. We're amplifying the voice of the grassroots to get things done and to make politics fun. That's what we do. It's March 18th, and it's 2022, believe it or not, and you are on the Friday Power Lunch. So we're going to do something different today, get things started off with our guest MC, the wonderful, fabulous Fennell Norton. Let's do a little chitty chat about the show. How are you, Fennell?
I am doing just fine, Catherine. How are you today?
Well, good. Is the sun shining down there in the Chesapeake?
Yes, the sun is shining today. It was a lot of rain and fog, but now it's shining, so I am ready.
You're ready. Well, let's talk about the show. I'm so excited. We have the guests from the Courier News, and we also have the panel. We have a great roundtable with the filmmaker RESISTERHOOD and also the guests on that. But let's talk about more than words. When you think about this theme, what does it mean to you? You are in the Grassroots Coalition. You're head of the messaging team. So words are your thing. Am I right?
Yeah, words are my thing. And you know what, Catherine, listening to you just a few seconds ago tells you why words are so important. People have to get passionate. They have to connect to those words. It has to be meaningful. It needs to connect to them every day. And that's what we've learned over the last couple of years, is that we've had a real issue with messaging. And I think that this year we are finally going to turn the tables on that. And we're going to message so that people understand, they can connect to it, they can take what's national and make it local so that we can take action. You're muted, Catherine.
I'm muted because I got a new puppy and the puppy likes to make noises. When we're talking about the demise of what's important about messaging is in news, right? Getting accurate and news, getting news from the right sources. And what are your thoughts on that? The importance of really journalism and news today?
So there are a couple of things that makes today so exciting for me, which is why I'm so excited about having this interview. Is nothing irritates me more than the words low information voters. And so that's a problem, because if your voters don't have information, then they can't make the right kinds of decisions. So that means that we have to get the right news in their hands in a way that makes sense. I was reading something today, and it was someone's ad, and it said omnibus. And I thought to myself, well, what is that? Is that a bus that's taking people to the Omni? Where are they going? But the whole point is, I'm sure that most people around here know what an omnibus bill is, but how many folks actually every day know what that is? So we have to talk to people in a way that makes sense to them so that they are connected to the news and connected to what it means.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we have all these different ways to get news, like from Twitter, social media, and there's so many problems with like the conspiracy stories. I'm thinking about Ukraine, and I don't know if you saw that the other day, they were interviewing people from Russia, and the Russian people were just saying there is no war. And I thought about our own country, about the issue we have here with news. I mean, that's an issue for our democracy. What are your thoughts on that?
God, so yes, and it really is sort of terrifying for me when I think about, I mean, it feels just like it. When I saw on TV, it was a son, he called his father, and his father said, oh, no, that's not happening. So that just tells you that it's a real issue when people are siloed in terms of the news that they get. But I think what we have to remember is we just have to keep pushing through. Friends and family have no idea how much power they have. So that means it's not just the message or the messenger, but it's also the vehicle that we get the news through. And that's where we got to go to work.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about it too, like more than words, I think about our guests from RESISTERHOOD today. And I think about their activism and how that gets out the word, right? And really doing more than words is lobbying, marching, writing postcards, talking to your neighbors. And these are so important to just do, words are important, actions are important.
Yeah. And you know what? My last point would be oftentimes taking those actions, whether it's postcards or letters or protesting, that is powerful in itself. And that moves, that's part of the whole movement. So it's every little thing we do. You got to be brave in your own way, whatever that means for you. But the point is, you got to get off the sidelines.
Get off the sidelines. Okay, so let's get off the sidelines and into the show. And Fennell, I'm so grateful that you're here again with us. I hope we make this a regular thing. It's so good to see you. You're looking great. I love the red. Just great way to kick off Friday with you, friend. So let's get to the best special spectacular part is when we meet our guests, say a little hello, and then we'll get to the grassroots news. So I'd love to bring up our first guest, MEGHAN MCCARTHY. She is the VP of Content for Courier News and the Courier Newsroom. Am I muted again?
Just for a minute.
For a minute. I don't know that my hands weren't on anything. So somebody maybe thought I had nothing good to say. Hey, MEGHAN, so great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. This is an excellent way to spend a Friday lunchtime.
Yeah, well, we're so excited to talk about local news and what y'all are doing. So thank you for being here. And Kate Bassett, I'm so glad, and everybody in the room, how much fun is this that Kate was able to come? She wasn't on our graphic, but we're so excited that she's here. Kate, you're the Director of Content Organizing for Courier Newsroom. How are you doing today?
I am great. I just want to say I don't ever want to go to a meeting again that doesn't include a dance party at the beginning.
Yes.
I'm just going to make myself, I live in Michigan, but I'd like to make myself an honorary Virginian so I can come to your power lunches.
Yay! Well, we love the dance thing. You know, part of this, you do it every Friday. You have to have on your dancing shoes and your good pants, your COVID pants. You could sit here and still dance. So that's great. I'm so glad you're able to make it. That's awesome because news is so important. So thank you, Kate and MEGHAN. We're loving it. And who doesn't love CJ, filmmaker of Resisterhood? She's been with us all month for Women's History Month. How are you doing, my friend? You're on mute. Go ahead and
Hey, yay. It says unmute myself, but I already did that. So I'll make that go away. Doing great. So excited about the sun. Yes, so excited to be here with you. And I'm so excited that we have three of my favorite people in the world, subjects of the film Resisterhood. I can't wait until everybody gets to hear them speak. They're amazing.
Me too. I love your blossom. Is that your scarf you have? You're getting ready for spring.
It is my cherry blossoms, which are out. I think the peak is going to be in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if you can get to the tidal basin,
let's do it, right?
go see those cherry blossoms. Yep.
Yeah, we're like we said, March is roaring in, but we're not going out like a lamb. So I'm excited you're here, CJ, and excited that we'll be partnering with you. And I hope everybody got to see some of the film. And if not, of course, we'll talk about that. You can still see that. And I am excited to introduce our next guest, Mimi Hassanein, political activist, Egyptian political activist. You're an immigrant, a grandmother who ran for office in Maryland, and you tell us what you ran for.
I ran for the Democratic Central Committee, and I won. But it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and I had such a great time. And I'm still working with the Democratic Central Committee representing my district.
Well, good. We bonded in the back room because we both love food. And if today Mimi is just lovely building bridges, and just we'll talk about her later. If you stay for the after chat, we can get your baklava recipe, I hope. So.
Yeah. And I love dancing because I love to belly dance.
Oh, all right. Belly dancing it is. We'll take you up on that. All right, Mimi, great to meet you. Next up, Margaret Morrison, civil rights activist. And you're also a retired public school teacher, which is great.
Yes, and I was so pleased that Cheryl Crim.
Did you call him on his cell? Okay. All right, thank you.
So sorry. Let's make sure. Yeah, give me 1 second. Let's just mute.
Have to call on yourself.
Okay, so sorry. Give me a second. We'll figure out make sure you're muted in the room. We are a live show, so we have the capability to just sort of pause for a second. Okay, Margaret, let me just say something real quick too. I am so excited because having you in the room, you are the legacy that you marched along John Lewis and Martin Luther King as a teenager from Selma to Montgomery. I want to say that first up. And tell me how you're doing over there.
Okay, first of all, let me correct you. I was not a teenager when I was I was that was the year I was born in 1936. That March was 1965. So I was more than I was a mother at that point.
Oh,
but I was determined to put my 2 cents worth in fighting for democracy so much had happened prior to that march. And so
Yes.
when Bloody Sunday, when I saw that, I knew that I was ready to put my body on the line. So that's why I participated and have continued to participate.
Well,
And
you are the emblem. You just are what we need to hear from in this room later today in our roundtable about that long game and not giving up. You are just example of that. Thank you, Margaret. So, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you later. And last but not least, Congressman LUIS GUTIERREZ, former Congressman, champion of human rights for the Dreamers, immigrants' rights, and as we say, rebel with a cause. How are you doing, Congressman?
Let me unmute again here.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you so much to allow me to participate here in Chicago this morning and other places this afternoon. I look forward to our wonderful conversation and dialogue today. Thank you so much for allowing me to bring my perspective to this wonderful dialogue and conversation.
I know we're all excited. I think the room is jazzed up. We do need to hear. It's great to hear from the continued work you're doing on immigrants, and it's so important. So thank you. It's just an honor to meet this panel, and just everybody in the room is excited. So thank you all. And let's get to the next part, our shameless shill of what we do. We hope that on social media that this is where we need to build our power, get our word out. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, put our thumbs up on the videos, and also subscribe to the badass briefings and the Tuesday tidbits. And of course, the favorite part, stay for the after chat. You know, post 1 p.m., that's where it really happens in the room. You'll be able to talk. Some of our guests will be able to stay later. So we hope you'll stay later too. And also, you know that become a patron of the show. We do have a subscription series, and what a better time to support women doing this kind of work than Women's History Month. So please consider being a patron. And I would like to say a special thank you to Catherine Reed and Susan Burke. Thank you for investing in our work. We love it. And I also want to say always, we have to recognize our whole team. This is a team effort. And I want to say hi to our crew. Stare up in the box there. Ambassador Buzz stares with us today. Robin, show wizard, and she is the show wizard. Heidi Dragneff, Twitter guru and makeup expert. If you were in the green room, she looks lovely. And Shamara Brown is with us, and Laura Martinez. They'll be helping in the Zoom crew. Welcome them. So glad that they're helping us today. And of course, as you saw, our special guest, MC Fennell Norton. So I'm glad to have my sister in the room to do this show. And we will pitch it over now for our grassroots update with Louisa Borowski. And hello, Louisa, how you doing?
I am good, Catherine. How are you?
Good, holding up. You know, the weather feels good, so I'm ready to get on my shoes to go out and do something. We marched last week a little bit. I'm ready for more. So thank you for updating us today.
Well, great. So today I'm going to give just a summary of what we accomplished during the legislative session this year. The legislative session has pretty much officially ended. There will be a special session in April, so some things are carrying over to April 27th. So be aware, and that means I'll probably be back with some calls to action. So that will be another opportunity to engage. But we were really, really active as part of the coalition this year on a number of issues. First, public health. This was the first year we got involved in public health, but it was so necessary because of COVID-19. And all of the bills that we were opposing, there was only one bill that did get through, and that was the one on unmasking in schools. And we all know that schools have been such a hot topic, and it was very difficult to, oppose the fact that a lot of families and parents were frustrated about the pandemic. But for the most part, all of the other bills that we were concerned about related to COVID-19 did not pass. And so that is very good news for our ongoing public health here in Virginia. Next, we have climate and clean energy. Our coalition led the opposition to the nomination of Andrew Wheeler as the Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources. So that was really an important piece of what we did, even though that's not a particular piece of legislation. Additionally, we worked with the Senate to make sure they held the line on our regional greenhouse gas initiative, our Virginia Clean Economy Act, and our Clean Car Standards, all of which remained intact, at least for now. We are going to be vigilant, though, during that special session. We're a little concerned that these might come up at that point again. We want to note also that as we've been working and starting our advocacy on climate and clean energy 3 years ago, more and more senators are aware of the coalition and are working with us. Several of them include chairs of key committees and one person we regularly text with on key issues and votes. So this is really a growing momentum, which is great for us. 1 second. There's a lot to say today. So our next topic is the environment. We struggled a little bit more on the environmental bills, and our advocacy did help transform, though, some horrible legislation into some not quite as horrible legislation that got passed. Unfortunately, the citizen boards, which are really important check and balance in this space, have been weakened, but we've started the path of educating our legislators about the importance of protecting our water and air. And then finally, I want to note for education, 2 of the bills that we were supporting have made it through. So we're very excited about the next steps for them. There were a couple of not so great education bills that didn't make it through because of our advocacy. So we're very happy about that. And then finally, on campaign finance reform, it was a tough year for campaign finance reform. Only 4 of our 24 bills that were introduced made it through, but a couple of them will be considered in the special session. So the overall news is we stopped the bad bills. And that was really the key for this year. We wanted to make sure that the gains that we'd made for the last 2 years didn't get rolled back. And I would say for the most part, that was the case. There wasn't a lot of great progress moving forward, but it's hard to do that when we have half of our legislators being run by the Republicans. And so gets back to that point of educate the voters now so they know why it's so important about who they vote for going into the future. So yes, I just want to thank everyone again. I think we emailed more than 20,000 legislative emails during session. If you count how many people were copied on each of the emails, that's a lot, especially for a really new effort from the coalition. So I want to thank everyone who participated and look forward to continuing our work in this area.
Thank you. That was awesome. And you know, it's funny, Louisa, I on the news today, I was getting ready and the actual news reporter said, and news from the General Assembly who got nothing done this year. That was the message, and then couldn't even decide, and the budget is not agreed upon. And I think we're like 2 or 3 billion separate difference between what the Democrats want. It's not even 100,000. We're talking billions of dollars difference.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I guess, sadly not a huge surprise. I mean, what's interesting about the budget is this is a budget that Northam put together, but was then adjusted by Youngkin. And so this typically, when we have a budget year, we do go to special session to discuss the budget because it is a big deal, and we only do it every other year in Virginia. So fortunately, we will have that special session where everyone can really focus on these budget elements. So fingers crossed that we get more of what we're looking for, because fortunately in Virginia, we have the money, right? We have the money. And so why aren't we using it to support our communities?
Yes. And that's what we need to do. We want to invest, not extract it, and not keep investing in education. So thank you, Louisa.
Exactly. And thanks, Catherine.
Get your tea, warm up that throat. I've learned when I do the lunch, I always use my cup. So I don't have that. So if I drink out of the water bottle, I usually dribble on down my end of my shirt. So that doesn't happen anymore. Well, I want to get started with our next session on news and local news and all about news with Fennell Norton. I'm going to hand it over to you, friend, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you. So I'm so excited to have this opportunity to chat with Megan and Kate. So I don't see them on the screen. There you guys go. Hi, Megan. How are you? Hi, Kate. So I'm going to give you guys a second, but I wanted to quote you, Kate. One of the things that you said is, few things are more powerful than people engaged with the truth. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about the Courier and how you made the decision and what it actually does.
Yeah. Do you want me to take that, Megan, or do you want to jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right. So I am actually so excited. You all are like my first big audience since joining Courier. I have been here for 2 whole weeks, and I made the move after 20 years in civic journalism and 6 years in Michigan-based politics. I worked on the Biden campaign in 2020, and when I discovered what Courier was doing, it felt like the unicorn, because having the experience of being in civic journalism for 20 years, before that was a thing we really talked about, I understand the importance of connecting policy and policymakers, people, to the everyday experiences that what happens in legislature trickles down into their communities and all the ways that that happens. But then when we look at what's happened in social media, when we look at what's happened particularly since 2016 with mis and disinformation online, we understand that the truth isn't a given anymore, right? And people can't trust things that look like news sources anymore. And there is nothing more powerful than a collective of people that are willing to harness their personal networks. I know so many of you are advocacy organizers in the room, so you understand the importance of the words relational organizing and being able to trust the news sources that you're sharing in your community. And that's where we come in and the work that Courier is doing. And I'll let Megan talk a little bit about our 8 newsrooms across the country right now. But I'm so excited. And by the way, I want every state in the country to have something like what you all are doing, because I have spent 6 years building and organizing with volunteers. And if we had this everywhere, we would be doing so well. So I'm just excited
to talk about the stuff that you do, Kate. So don't worry. So we'll get there. So Megan, go ahead and talk a little bit about the 8 newsrooms that you have and why it was so important to do that.
Yeah, so just want to say hi first, Meghan McCarthy. I've spent my whole career in more traditional media, and so it's really fun for me to interact in more advocacy space. I am in Alexandria, Virginia, so I am a fellow Virginian, and I helped launch the first newsroom for Courier Newsroom in 2019, which was Virginia. And the reason that we started in Virginia is because we obviously had an important election in 2019. After that, the CEO and founder, Tara McGowan, launched the 6 to 7 other newsrooms throughout the country. So we have one in Michigan, Iowa, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Virginia, obviously, and then Florida. And the theme across many of those newsrooms, as you might guess already, is how close and how important elections are in those states. So we have about 3 to 5 full-time staff in every single state reporting on the ground about what is going on in their state legislatures, what is happening on the federal level that applies to their home state, and trying to have a little fun too along the way.
Well, here's what's really awesome. So I did have an opportunity to take a look at all 8 of the newsrooms, and it was very, I felt so hopeful, because the news really was at the ground level. It was local, but it was also the national things that we think are so important. So can you talk a little bit about how you guys are so good at making the national local, and where you get your sources from and how you get your stories?
Yeah, so I think we have 3 sort of content areas that we're really focusing on this year that I think help us take the deluge of political information that's out there every single day, and then filter it down for our audience, who are people that would not, the vast majority of people don't know who their state legislature is, or even maybe who their congressman is a lot of the time. So we try to focus in as much as possible. So the 3 areas that we're looking at this year are accountability. So reminding our readers and really digging into some of the extreme statements, beliefs, groups that their elected officials or potential elected officials are speaking to. So that helps us just stay on top of that. And it's one of those things that I think traditional media might cover it once and assume that everyone knows it. And especially if you're on Twitter and you're staying up on the news very intensely, you might know that Seb Gorka was an example of that from Virginia's past election. When Glenn Youngkin did a radio interview with Seb Gorka, most of the coverage did not mention that Seb Gorka has neo-Nazi ties, but that was something that was important, we felt, in our coverage to explain that to our readers. So that's kind of the accountability. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mel.
No. I think that's perfect. I want to go ahead and finish.
The other big one, besides elections coverage, is how government helps. That's something that I think traditional media does not view as newsworthy a lot of the time, but it's obviously very hard to know where your tax dollars go if no one ever explains the positive things that can come out of that. So Medicaid, for example, and the millions of children that get health insurance and health coverage through that that's not considered necessarily newsworthy, or it's not going to build your career as a reporter, but is very important information. And obviously that's not reaching a lot of people right now. So we try to focus in on how government helps, and then, you know, how government can hurt too, depending on who is in charge.
So from a grassroots perspective, how can we help? How can we engage more so that we are helping to make sure that the messaging is getting out there to our audiences? What can we do?
I am so glad you asked that question. I am happy to jump in here. So one of the things that I noticed working as a journalist in Michigan for 20 years was that a lot of times the best conversations, the most important things that happened, seeds that were planted that have grown into amazing experiences, opportunities, changes in policy at local and state level, required people to come together and advocate. And not everyone has that tool kit right in their toolbox. So we're developing a model really for civic engagement and advocacy around civic journalism. It's something that hasn't really existed in a traditional space, because those of us who were journalists grew up expecting that people will read your stuff because it's quality, and that's how you develop advocates for your community newspapers. But we know now, with the death knell of so many local papers in communities around the country, that it's actually upon all of us to do more. So we're going to be developing a training. I'm going to put in the chat a sign up for all of you. I would love to have people from this group especially to jump on with us early, because you're already so far ahead in the advocacy game that I think you could be leaders here. But we're going to be training people on how to share best practices. We're going to be creating some online communities so that other organizations like you that are doing this, that are working in these spaces, we can lift each other up and use our audiences to collectively bring good information to the forefront, to bring truth, to bring opportunities to gather and connect people who are interested. You know, I was listening to all of this great grassroots conversations that you guys were having and updates and all of the different groups. When we can provide news sources and other people can start communicating and dialoguing and engaging on that, that's a great way to pull people together and say, hey, you're interested in advocating for education. I'm interested in advocating for education. Let's come together. It's just coalition building, power building by using truthful, factual information.
Right. As you guys have said, there is nothing more powerful than engaged and well-informed people with the truth. So Megan, is there anything else that you'd want to add to that? Because we want to be sure that as we sort of end this interview, that we walk away with understanding, how do we, like, I didn't know about the Dogwood. And when I started to read it, I was just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. It's phenomenal. So how do we continue to get the word out, and will it always be online?
Yes, definitely always online. One of the other things that makes us unique is that we are very focused on social media first. So we are not thinking write an article and then, you know, put it in social media to promote it. We're really writing for our social channels. So we're on Instagram and Facebook. So those are the two places I would recommend following via Dogwood News. The other thing I would say is the hardest part of the reporting work a lot of the time is finding like the human beings, the people who are willing to tell their stories. Because I think that is what can make this so compelling and make someone who's maybe not interested in politics actually want to read something about Medicaid again, for example. It's not a dry policy story. It's the people that are benefiting from these programs or who are missing out because of a change or something like that. So anytime you can connect us to any of those people, or if you want to tell your own story, for example, that I think is the number one thing we would love to get.
Oh, that is fantastic. I think we would absolutely, I think all the folks around here, we would love that. And just especially around messaging in general. While we have the last few minutes, I would really love to ask you guys about that. What do you think the most effective part of messaging, getting to the right audiences, is?
I would say a big thing I'm pushing the newsrooms to think about now is writing as like concisely as possible and as clearly as possible, which should be a goal of any news writing, but just, you know, really hitting a message over and over again with the facts. So, you know, all the legislation that went through the Virginia General Assembly on schools and CRT and all that, you know, just explaining that in as few words as possible in a way that somebody can be scrolling their social media feed and understand like, oh, this is the thing that's happened, and it's not accurate, or this is a made up thing that is going on. The more times we can deliver that message to people as clearly and quickly as possible, I think we have done our jobs.
So I'm hearing clear, concise, and consistent. So
Yes.
making sure we do that message over and over again in a way that makes sense. And we don't often have an awful lot of that, but I can tell you from reading the Dogwood, actually, quite frankly, I went and skimmed them all, and I think that there's really excellent points that we can take from each one of them. I am just going to be encouraging everyone that I know to pick up the Dogwood, to get it online, because it really is good, useful information there that really is clear about what we should be focused on right now. So any last words? What do you want us to take away? If we remember nothing else, what is your clear, consistent message that we should be persistent about?
Kate, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll take that. I think making sure that you are sharing good information is the most important thing that you can do. And that is using your social channels, especially, when we're talking about things like the Dogwood, using your social channels to boost information. This is how the mis and disinformation war really started. People were infiltrating and sharing. People in your networks trust what they see when they see that you've posted it. Now, they may not remember when they're telling their friends where they got it. They may not even remember, the person that they shared it from. They're going to see the headline, but because you shared it, they will know to think about that. And just so you all know, I saw a couple of things in the chat. I'm sorry I had to change a setting. I'm going to put the training link back in now.
Very good. Thank you so much. Megan, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I'm super excited about the program that Kate is building. And so I think this is like a perfect alignment of everything that we're trying to accomplish. So I really appreciate the time to get to talk to all of you.
Good. I am so excited, guys. So Dogwood fan right here, but I'm also going to be a fan of the other 7 as well. Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you. That was really good. And we will be keeping in touch, Megan, and so grateful. And thank you, Fennell. That was an awesome piece. And we are going to be featuring local news, I think, for the next couple of months. And we feel like that is the key to really upholding our democracy. So our next segment, we're really excited talking about words and storytelling. I mean, we have filmmaker CJ CRIM here to talk about Resisterhood and this wonderful panel. So we want to show you the trailer of the Hey CJ. We're going to show the trailer first, and then we'll do our roundtable. Does that sound good to you?
And he had the audacity to ask, why couldn't I vote for him? What did I have to lose? Everything.
We the people have the power.
Recently, someone looked at me and he said, hey, you lady from ISIS, get out of our country and leave us alone. I feel so bad now that I have to take my scarf off when I'm driving my car because I'm scared about my life.
We have to keep together. We have to keep talking. We have to keep fighting. We have to keep inspiring each other and reminding each other what's at stake.
Mr. Speaker, I will not be here or outside at the inauguration ceremony. The event I'm going to is the Women's March on Washington.
Thank God to the women for having invited and called us all together.
To me, it's like a very simple message. You're not alone.
Love, not hate, makes America great.
I want to stand up for people who are in danger, and I want to use the incredible platform that I have to make someone else feel more comfortable in their own skin.
Oh, when I got to see my name in the ballot, that was the most exciting moment in my whole life.
And I look to you to be that other generation that will carry forth the march for freedom.
She made sure that her voice was heard. And I thought, if she can do this, then I can do this.
The single largest electoral force in the United States of America is women.
Good morning, resistors.
You gotta vote, you gotta educate yourself, you gotta get out there, you gotta fight for what you believe in.
Women all around, raise your fist. Now is the time, we must resist.
There's an incredible amount of opportunity now for all of us to rise up and to really stand for something.
Let's rise up, let's march on Washington. Our footsteps and our voices will be heard.
so excited we're back. And thank you again for partnering with us all month long. It's been so much fun. When I see that, I just get so excited still. It just really revs me up, you know. But let's talk about the documentary, the storytelling, the aspect of that. And I like to bring up everybody on the panel as well while we're talking. And Mimi, Margaret, former Congressman LUIS Gutiérrez is here. Hello, everybody. It's so powerful, this film and this experience that a lot of us were part of, right? We all stood up and we marched and you were compelled to tell this story. So let's start there with you, CJ, and then go around to the different people, from Mimi to Margaret to LUIS, and talk about that story and tell us about your story first. And then we will get to some other we'll dig a little deeper. So CJ, what is that importance of that storytelling for you?
Well, I have to say, I didn't set out to make a feature film. I was so angry after the 2016 election, and I could just feel this energy in the air that was just so, that I took my camera out. I am a filmmaker, but I took my camera out and just started interviewing people. And then all of a sudden this thing came around that was the Women's March. And that was really the catalyst that sent me finding these amazing people that you see on your screen. And so the film takes place from the Women's March through the midterm elections in 2018, which of course, as we all know, brought in the most progressive, the most people of color, the most women, and we can do that again, and we have to do that again. So what we're trying to do is bring the film out to show the positive energy that we had, and that, women, but also our allies, men, yeah. Which is one reason I had LUIS in the film, because my husband said, I asked him if he was going to the Women's March, and he said, no, it's just for women. No, it isn't. It's for everybody. So that was kind of the catalyst to get the film moving.
Well, it was all like in the song, even we heard, more than words, it is about men and women to make this change. Of course, women definitely are part, even in Ukraine, just to be inspired by the women that are taking action there. We definitely have that force, that's something that compels us. So I'm interested to talk to, I'll start with Mimi first. Tell us about your story, and as an activist, a political activist, and from Egypt, from Cairo, coming to this country and getting involved. Tell us a little bit about your story. And then like I said, I want to hear from each of you, and then we'll come around again and get really deeper into activism and where you think we're going with it and what maybe we need to do. Go ahead, Mimi. Can you unmute yourself? It's okay. We'll give you a second. We were already in the green room, right? Just take a second. We're patient. Or we can go. Maybe we'll go to whoever. LUIS, you're unmuted. Let's start with LUIS, and Mimi, you find your voice. Go ahead, LUIS. Congressman, so great to have you here.
Thank you. Well, look, my parents came here as migrants from the island of Puerto Rico, not as immigrants. Obviously, they were citizens of the United States. They couldn't speak English. They didn't understand the culture. They had no friends. And obviously, there were no signs that say, welcome, happy to have you here in the city of Chicago. Right. There's a reason why I don't watch West Side Story. Sorry for all the fans. If I had written West Side Story, I assure you, the Puerto Ricans would have been wearing the white gym shoes. Just a small little tidbit as I look at the history and how I was looked at. So I was born in 1953. So I was born when it was legal to discriminate, when separate but equal was the law of the land. And I am so blessed to have watched, as a child and as a young adolescent, my rights, expanded. My rights just becoming greater. We could then maybe move through the house we wanted, swim in the swimming pool we wanted to, go to the school we wanted to be treated more equally, because women and men gave up their lives during the civil rights movement. I believe that my life was transformed because of that. Mm-hmm. Had it not been for the Voting Rights Act, the 4th Congressional District of the state of Illinois would have never been created. Because I assure you, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party would not have woken up one day and said, hey, why don't we just have a little more fairness and equality for those Latinos that are expanding? No, it was the Voting Rights Act. And so I am always thankful to the women and the men who not only marched, but sacrificed their lives so that one day I could have a voice in America. And I understand that I have a responsibility to those that came before me to expand the voices of those who today live a life of injustice and unfairness in this country.
Yes, no, that's so true. And, you know, we see those voting rights, what's under attack again. So it's almost like living long enough to go full circle, right? So I'm so glad you're still fighting. Let's go. That's a great segue into Margaret because of the civil rights. And sorry, I got you wrong, not as a teenager, but as a more of an adult marching with Martin Luther King and John Lewis. Tell us your story as an activist and tell the room about how you are still fighting hard. And then we'll go to Mimi.
Yes. In one sense, I've been an activist since the age of 8, but that's another story entirely. I am not an immigrant. I am a descendant of enslaved people from Africa. And so the thrust of what I fight for is in one sense different from what others are fighting for. But in another sense, we're all fighting for the humanity of every person who exists in this world. And that's why I appreciate so the millions of people around the world who, as Cheryl CRIM was filming us on the mall on January, the 17th, I believe, of 20, of my years of merged into
2017,
2017,
right?
yes. I saw her with that camera panning the audience. And beyond that camera, I looked out at that crowd and say, yes, I am not alone in this fight for equality and justice. I have a lot of other people with me, I have a lot of other women with me. Look at this crowd. And I saw beyond that camera lens that she had, something in the future that was so promising. And it did culminate in the midterm elections. As somebody mentioned, we brought into the fold so many women of color that it was just so hopeful, so inspiring. And back to Louise's comment about the 1965 march, I feel somehow responsible for helping to bring that to fruition because I was part of that group. I marched on the last day of the Selma to Montgomery march. And beginning with trepidation, I had no idea what I would encounter along the road, but with jubilation in the final analysis, because the act eventually was passed.
Yes.
And now I'm back at the beginning. Do I march again to Selma, Montgomery? Because the Voting Rights Act has been gutted.
Yes.
First in 2013 and again in 2021. And we are so evidently impotent for Congress to reenact the provisions that make it strong. Why can't we pass the John Lewis Act? Why can't we pass all of these Voting Rights Act? Because without a vote, there is no such thing as a representative democracy. So that's what I'm fighting for now.
Yes. Well, I have to say that you just summed it up. And it's interesting because I watched your journey over the last couple of years in interviews. And after the election of Biden, I know we had such hopefulness and we talked about the voting, and it's a lot can happen in a day and a week and a year. And so your message of staying in the long game is what we need to hear. It is so frustrating. I want to get Mimi in on this because each one of you brings such a wonderful, beautiful element. And like you said, an eye to this, what's happening in America and what's happened in our history. And Mimi, you bring, I love that your approach to activism is really building bridges and you believe in this unity. But tell us about your story, how you got started in this journey and on this film and who you are today.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having us. And I'm so honored to be with you. As an immigrant, I wanted to be the voice of immigrant people. We immigrated to this beautiful country, America, because the freedom. And I realized that there is not really nothing free here except buy one, get one free. They can locate where you are anywhere. And, it's great to have the freedom. But I wanted to practice that because, sometimes in different countries, we don't have that freedom that you have a seat at the table and have your voices heard. So I have 3 children and 15 grandchildren who were born here and raised here. And I wanted to make sure they have a seat at the table. So when I start working, of course, I didn't speak the language very well. So my way into the system was the food. I always say food and art are universal language. So I got into the PTA and all that stuff by baking my famous baklava. So everybody knows Mimi by her baklava, So I am so happy that I understood the American system, because now I understand how to work the system. Because a lot of immigrant people here, we just immigrate for the freedom. We wanted to experience the stuff that you have here that we don't have it back home. And it's great to be here, but like I said, there is nothing free except buy one, get one free. But I'm very honored that I had met CJ because she gave me the opportunity, and all my other friends who were in the filmmaker, to tell my story, because I had accomplished a lot. I ran for the Democratic Central Committee and I won, but this came after I learned the system. So my message for all immigrant people: understand the system and make it work for you. Because when you don't understand the system, you're not enjoying the freedom in living in America. And don't forget, make sure to bake baklava.
Baklava, yeah. And I just love that idea of bringing food together. But no, each one of your stories is really compelling. And I love, first of all, the civic engagement. I think even when Margaret, you had talked about getting young people that were just such the hope and getting them involved. And this is so important with voting. And I think the whole key here is what we're talking about, especially coming up in this election, is voting. But I want to just say, telling our story is so important to document it, because it really inspires other people, but it also allows us to make sure that it is documented correctly. And I think that's so important, CJ, for this. Thank you again for this inspiring film. And one last question to go around, and then we'll go to the after chat after one, is, we talked about, like, last time I visited and watched, there was so much hopefulness. We saw the election of Joe Biden. We saw then the insurrection. We saw the inability to pass voting rights, but we've seen some bright spots and all that, because it's easy to focus on things that we just get frustrated about, but we've done also a lot, passed some bills that have been helpful. But it feels like we're just going through this back and forth backlash kind of quickly here. And as activists, I'd like to see and dig into your soul right now to figure out, like, what are the takeaways for activists in the room? Do you think that we should know about, or that your views on how to get active, or maybe you're thinking of a whole different way of how we need to approach moving forward? I mean, we've marched, we protest, we lobby, we vote. And it just, so I'd really love to hear from your long experience. I want to start with, I'll start with Margaret this time, and what you're feeling now and some of this advice.
Feelings.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
My feelings fluctuate from day to day based on what I view on the television screen, or on Facebook, or reading the newspapers, or listening to journalists. What I wish I could say is that things are going to be better in 2022 for the midterms and 2024. And they can, and they would, if we did what we have already done in 2016. It's infuriating to hear news reporters consistently state, well, the Democrats will lose in 2022, but they don't follow up. Losing is not automatic. You lose when you don't vote. So they need to put the other part of that. We will lose in 2022, and in 2024 if we don't go to the polls and vote. Vote our conscience. Voting is our power. And sometimes I've become so infuriated, I cut the TV off. Not that they haven't said that, because that it's just wrong to put into a person's mind that we're going to lose, because that means so many people will sit back, well, we're going to lose, so why? What is my vote? Which brings me to the next point. I want to tell people, no matter what the age, that voting is important. Always, for every election, for every position. And all of us should know by now the importance of the Secretary of State. You would think that, or the Attorney General, you would think that, and yet people don't know. So what do we need to do? Continue to educate people that your vote is powerful. That's why they want to take it away. Don't let them do that. Go to the polls and vote. Don't be a one-issue voter, because a one-issue voter destroys all of the rest that is good in the United States of America. You just can't vote for one thing and ignore 20 others that are even more important, the one personal issue that you have. So that's another lesson, I would say. But ultimately, I would say, don't ever think that your vote does not matter. Your vote matters as much as you matter. And I know you matter. So get out there and vote.
Yes, I love your takeaway, and I wrote everything down because I want to use it in my activism. Not that I didn't know, we always say voting is our superpower, but the way that you really talked about the education and that making sure people understand that they matter, their vote matters, and that's super powerful. And that's a lesson, I think, to all of us. I want to go to Luis, and then we'll get Mimi back. I don't know if she popped out of the room or she's in the room, but we lost her, Robin.
We lost her.
Look for Luis. So tell us, in that your view of the future. I know you must be frustrated. We talked about this with the Dreamers. So I don't want to steer you in any direction, but just tell us what you're thinking about. For how
what I'm thinking about right now is yes, watching over 10 million people live in a permanent underclass. Let's remember that the majority of the undocumented in the United States have already been here more than 2 decades.
Yes.
They didn't arrive yesterday. And yet they are in this permanent state of underclass, exploited. And so I am going to be coming out of retirement in May. I cannot sit back in my chair and in my comfort and the comfort of my pension and my wonderful grandchildren and my family and not act. So we will be putting together an organization, a pro-immigrant organization, and we will be announcing it that month. Why? Because even today, we have watched the Biden administration deport thousands of Haitians who tried to enter this country through the border. He deported them. On the one hand, he granted tens of thousands of Haitians temporary protective status, and I applauded that they could stay. And temporary protective status means exactly that. You get a work permit, you get a Social Security, and you're protected against deportation. But how does the administration, on the other hand, deport others? And I want this time to make sure that when we bring our immigrant community together, that we see the different faces, the different colors, the different textures of that immigrant community, the different accents of their voices. Many people don't even know in America that 1 out of 10 Black people that live in America is an immigrant. And people say, really, Luis? Yes, that's a fact. Kwame Raoul, who is the Attorney General of the state of Illinois, his parents immigrated to the United States from Haiti. Remember Vice President Harris and where her parents came from? But we don't do enough building. Yes, Latinos are the majority of the immigrants and the undocumented in the United States. That makes sense. We share a border. We share a continent with that community. But you want to know what? When you look at the dreamers, our young people, they're from South Korea. They're from Poland and Ireland.
Right.
They're from all over the world, and we should follow their example. I want to bring about comprehensive immigration reform and justice, and I still don't feel, and I am saddened to have to say this, that the Democratic Party of the United States of America has taken the issue of immigrant and immigrant rights and put it in the forefront where it should be. Look, we need to do this intersectionality, right? Of those fighting for climate, against climate change, for those fighting for women and the LGBTQ community. Yes, we need to do that, but don't leave on the one side this immigrant community that comes from all over the world. And lastly, let me just make this statement. We have watched over 2 million people have to flee Ukraine. When is it that the President of the United States and the Congress of the United States is going to send airplanes to go and bring Ukrainians to the safety of the United States of America until they can return to the safety of Ukraine? I think we have a responsibility. It should not only be the burden of Poland and the countries adjacent to the Ukraine. It is our responsibility as a leader of the world.
Yes, I thank you for that. I think that we all need to hear that. I did hear on the news yesterday, Cleveland was going to be welcoming people. So we hope that we will get that started. But to your point about immigration, I know as a Democrat or very frustrated with our party on these issues back when Obama got elected. I feel like it should have been the priority. And what we're having is voters drop off then. You know, I look at it as also people just get disengaged and disillusioned. We cannot do that. It's too much is at risk. So thank you, Luis, for those wonderful words. Mimi,
many of us miss John Lewis. All of us.
John Lewis.
John Lewis. But boy, I would love to have him right now so we can make some good trouble. Because I will tell you one thing, he would be saying exactly this, what I have said about immigrants, and his voice would be so resoundingly.
Well, it's coming through you. I hear it through you and through Margaret. It lives within us, and that's for sure. When we need to carry those legacies. We're gonna, Mimi, you have just maybe a minute. We're sorry to lose you, and then we're gonna wrap up the show and go to the after chat because we're at 1:03.
That's okay. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, voting is very important to me. I mean, and a lot of immigrant people, when we think about America, we just want a big house, a big car, nice life and stuff like that. But when I say understand the system and make it work for you, understand your civic duty. You have a duty here as a citizen. You always have a seat at the table, have your voices heard, So to have your voices heard, you have to participate on different organizations, be a part of the system. So I am encouraging everybody, immigrant or non-immigrant, to really have a seat at the table and have your voices heard, because that's the only way we're going to get the job done. There is no other way to get the job done except having a seat at the table, have your voices heard, and make the baklava.
Yeah, make the baklava. And I will, CJ, thank you for bringing this wonderful panel. If you guys can hold on with us, we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna talk about our next week's show. If you could imagine, if the show week to week, we love to just bring the issues that matters in front of all wonderful people in the room. So here we are. It's the end of the show, and it's a little bit after 1. So I'm glad you hung in there with us. It was so awesome. Thank you to our guests today. Thank you to Courier Newsroom, Megan and Kate. Glad it was so interesting about local news. We do need to make sure it's so important as we find out in this war that we're in. News matters, information matters, and telling our story matters. So thank you to all the panelists on Resisterhood, Margaret Morrison, Mimi Hannison, LUIS Gutíerrez, and also CJ CRIM. And let's wrap up. If you're a patron, if you haven't become a patron, you still have time to support our show. We would love that support month to month. It really helps us pay the bills. And also follow us on social media. So thank you for coming every week. Let's roll credits.